Shabbat Shalom. This week is Parshat Va'era, and we are in a part of the Torah, like the book of Genesis, we're now in Exodus. It is jam-packed. So every single Parsha has a lot going on, some that you might be very familiar with, and I hope some that is new. So just to give a little bit of context of where are we? Parshat Va'era, we are in the second Torah portion of the book of Exodus, of Shemot. And this is the Torah portion where Moses and Aaron first go to speak to Pharaoh to say, let my people go. So that's kind of the big thing at the start. Then what we're going to see, just to give you some highlights of the Torah portion so you know where we're going, then obviously Pharaoh says, who are you? What is this? Absolutely not. Why would I do that? And there's this whole scene with a staff turning into some people say a snake, some people say a tanin, kind of a serpentish, lizardish type of animal. And Pharaoh says, well, I could do that too. So Pharaoh's magicians take out their staffs, their rods, they turn into snakes. But of course, the staff of Moses and Aaron gobbles up and devours the ones of the Egyptian magicians. So that's kind of the second big part of the Torah portion. And then we get to the first few plagues. We get to the plague of blood. We get to frogs. We get to, keeps going. But that's kind of the arc of this week's Torah portion. And what I want to focus on is the idea of the staff, the rod, the stick, because it keeps coming up again and again in this week's Torah portion. It's going to come up a lot. But I also was thinking about it this week because I teach a class in our religious school, STARS, once a month, and it's called Torah Rocks. And each time we meet once a month, this is with 5th through 7th graders, we learn a story that has to do with a rock in the Torah. So we read the story, we do a dramatic reading of it, and then we do rock painting. Now, I know you might be thinking, wait a second, I thought you said we're going to focus on staff or a stick, a rod. Yes. But I've been thinking about it because the story that I taught with these kids in religious school this week also had a rod that's going to interact with the rock. So what I want to do for a few minutes is take us through, when does the staff of Moses come up again and again and again? In our Torah portion, it's used in a way that God wants it to be, but by the end of Moses' life, Moses' rod is used in a way that God does not want it to be used. So I want to walk us through that so that we get kind of this arc of what happens with this very special prop that shows up again and again in Moshe's life. So let's start with this Torah portion. Aaron is going to play an important role this week. Moshe, when God says, Moses, you are going to speak to Pharaoh and say, let my people go. Moses says, why me? I can't. I am slow of speech. I am tongue-tied. Please don't make me the spokesperson. So God actually says, all right, bring your brother Aaron with you. Aaron can help be your mouthpiece in speaking to Pharaoh. So Pharaoh and Moses go together. They both have their own staffs. It's like a big walking stick. Remember, they're also older in their years, and they have their walking sticks with them. And it's actually Aaron's staff that's going to be used to turn into the serpent. And that's the first time that we're going to see in the Torah a staff being used to either turn into something or to create something happening, almost like a magic wand of sorts. And that's where it begins. that it's Aaron's staff in the beginning that's actually used to turn into the serpent that will devour the serpents of the Egyptians. That's the first time. When do we see a staff again? It's going to be in the first plague. And again, it is not Moses' staff, but it is Aaron's staff that is placed into the Nile River, and the Nile becomes blood. Plague number 1. So we're already seeing in front of Pharaoh at the Nile that the staff is able to do miraculous things and really to be a sort of wand of the Almighty. Because we're not saying that Aaron and Moses are the ones who are performing these miracles. Rather, it's God who's working through them and through the staff to make these changes to the natural world happen. These abnormal things. We see the staff again as a conduit for really the power of God. When Moses takes his staff and places it into the sea to split the sea, and the Israelites are able to walk through. So again, we see the staff at the end of this story of the 10 plagues. Finally, they get out of Egypt. They're able to be freed. They're standing at the bank of the water and they're saying, wait a second, how do we cross? You brought us out of here to be killed? The Egyptians are right behind us. Moshe says, what are you complaining about? I didn't bring you to the edge of the water just to die. Wait for the miracle of God to happen. Haven't you seen what these miracles have been able to do? Let me talk to God, and God will perform yet another miraculous event for us. And God does. The staff, now Moses' staff this time, is placed into the water, and the sea splits and the people walk through on dry land. Those are all stories where the staff was used, and they worked out really well for the Israelites. There's one more story I want to bring up, and this is where the rock comes in, where the staff is used and it works out really well. Early in the Israelites wandering, they say to Moses, and when I say, really, it's that they heavily complain. You can imagine people rioting because they are thirsty. They don't have water. And God says, Moses, take your staff and hit this rock and water will flow. So Moses does it. And the people yet again have been saved by the miracles performed by God through this staff. Later in the wandering, again, the people are not just complaining, but they are rioting. The Israelites are saying, Moses, again, you brought us out to this wilderness to die? We have no water to drink. And Moses at this point is pretty frustrated, and God is also pretty frustrated. And God says again, slightly differently, says, take your staff, but this time, talk to the rock, and the water's going to flow. But Moses, and I think in his flustered anger, because the people are complaining, I mean, you can imagine Moses, they're rioting, he's out of his mind. He doesn't listen to the specific request of God. He doesn't talk to the rock. So later on in the journey, rather, he hits the rock. And yes, water does flow. But because Moshe hits the rock this time, when he was supposed to speak, he was still supposed to hold on to his rod, but he wasn't supposed to use it to hit the rock. It's because of that that ultimately God says, Moses, you're not allowed to go into the land of Israel. So even though in this Torah portion of Va'era, the staff is used to perform these miracles and it works out well for the Israelites and for Moses, by the end of Moses' story, it is his staff which really brings him to his own demise or the own sadness that comes at the end of his life. And I think that throughout this, really what it is God decides in different moments what the conduit of miracles is going to be. Yes, sometimes it's going to be a staff that's going to turn into something. Sometimes it's going to be a staff that is placed into the Nile and changes the essence of what is in front of them from water to blood or splitting the sea. God sometimes works that way. But sometimes God just wants us to use our words. And we have to know how to listen to those different options because ultimately it's God who can use might. Perhaps it is us who always need to use our words. Shabbat Shalom.